to the City of Greenfields Planning Commission special meeting tonight, December 5th. Calling the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. May we have roll call, please?
Chair Garcia,
Here.
Vice Chair Zavala,
Here.
Commissioner Urquidez, Commissioner Gallardo, Commissioner Vasquez.
Thank you for that. We have a full quorum. Can we now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Commissioner Gallardo, lead us.
Where we begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. We are now on D, public comments from the audience regarding items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments this evening?
I work at the farm down the street, and it mentions in there that there is some housing being built next to our facility. Well, I understand it's some kind of a program to help people get housing. One of our employees applied there, has gone through the process, from what I understand, of the application, and has been denied because he makes too much. Well, I know kind of what he makes. He doesn't make that much. Who is this program designed to help? He's a farm worker. The fact that he works in a cannabis facility, he still is a farm worker and who doesn't make all that much money. So that's just my.
Did you want to leave your name, sir, so somebody could contact you about this?
Yeah.
Can you say it?
Michael Van Brunt. Sorry. Van Brunt.
Van Brunt, V-A-N-B-R.
V-A-N-B-R-U-N-T.
Okay. All right. And if you'd like to, you can see Mr. Mugen over there in the green shirt and leave a number and somebody can hopefully contact you about that, if that's okay. Are there any other public comments? Any hands raised? Any emails?
No public comments.
Okay, with that, we'll close out public comments and move to consent agenda. There are no items. There are also no public hearings under item F. So we can go straight to G, other business. And the first item under this is a report from city staff on updates regarding the status of cannabis licenses in the city.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I appreciate your attendance tonight. Hopefully, we can have somewhat of a conversation. We just wanted to have you gather before the end of the year to talk about two important developments: the status of the cannabis industry overall, since they've been here about 7 years, and that's what this first agenda item is about. Now, in your staff report, we included two attachments. One was the initial approvals for the first 13 licensees. We included that just to bring back memories for some of you who were involved in that early process. It was a controversial proposition as to whether cannabis would be welcome, not just in Greenfield, here in Greenfield, but really throughout the entire state. Jurisdictions throughout California struggled with the idea altogether. I'm pleased to say that since cannabis has been in the city has collected $8.3 million in total tax revenues during that period of time. And as of 2023, we're forecasting to collect, since it's December, $2.3 million for the year. And in your report on the back, if you review the chart, the 7-year chart, the very first year, it was revenues. We're talking about tax revenues were approximately 300,000. Then the next 3 years, it was in the millions, 1 million, 1.3, 1.2. And then in the last 3 years, the city has collected over $2 million. The most recent year concluding, we're slated to collect $2.3 million. At the present time, we have 5 licensees in the city among the 13 that were originally licensed. And because, well, there isn't so much transition now, but these companies do business as various brands. So we've come to refer to them by their addresses, primarily 900 Cherry or Loudpack, 525 and 1071 is Shrin Group, 689 and 701 El Camino Real. Would be our next wave, and 46 and 48 4th Street is the facility that previously hosted Bloom. You may remember Bloom was in operation for a couple of years. When the vape crisis hit several years ago, they returned to Los Angeles and left the city. In fact, we had 3 companies basically leave the city. Ceres Labs, which we have very high hopes for, they spent tremendous amount of capital to set that laboratory up as a clean lab. Ceres Labs is no longer here. Flora, who once occupied the 525 site, no longer is here, and Harborside purchased from the previous ownership the Loudpack site. They currently still do business as Loudpack. So we have our 5 active licensees, and at the present, the only expansion currently on the boards today, as we speak, is the 20,000 square foot building recently approved for 689 El Camino Real, and that should increase their capacity. I will say that the regulatory permit, as all of you are well aware, Chapter 528 regulates these permits, and 528 authorizes the initial permit to be approved by the city council, and then subsequent renewals are approvable by delegated authority through the city manager. So the annual renewals normally won't go to the city council. However, the development agreements always have to be considered and approved by the city council, which brings me to the recent city council action this year, wherein the calendar with the planning commission support. Thank you. But the planning commission and the city council agreed to allow the staff to consolidate the regulatory schedule so that we're doing the same activities at the same time of the year. So the certificate of occupancy date doesn't matter. So you'll notice in the staff report probably that there's been a lot of activity in the last couple of months with the majority of the licensees obtaining the regulatory permit for operations for calendar year 2024. 1 licensee is outstanding yet, and all licensees are current on their taxes also, with 1 exception. So we're better today than we've ever been previously. Now I would like to summarize each of the licensees and discuss the major issues that we've had to deal with. It's organized in the staff report. Meet with Loudpack, which is located at 900, essentially across the street to the north of City Hall. The commission will require that the Loud Pack facility suffered a fire shortly after becoming operational, and the fire caused a lot of issues. It severely damaged 8 greenhouses, destroyed 2 entirely. And so the city has spent a lot of time working through those issues because the taxation on our permits is done through permitted square feet. So when they lost those greenhouses, they also lost the capacity to sell product to pay their taxes. Loud Pack has been in arrears on its taxation since that time, and are still in arrears on their taxes. They have an accounts receivable payment plan, which they're working to pay off so that they can become current on their tax obligations to the city. It's worth noting in your staff report, as shown in your staff report, they paid $618,000 taxes this year. Both the manufacturing and the cultivation components are capped. The second addendum in your staff report includes the current fee schedule for cannabis taxation. Both the manufacturing and the cultivation operations are capped based on a formula depending on their size. This is why you notice that the city has received $300,000 annually for its manufacturing taxation and $300,000 for its cannabis cultivation type permits. As I noted, we're currently working with the property owner, the property owner and the licensee. They're the same in this case, Harborside, to issue the regulatory permit for 2024. And again, work with them regarding their tax issues. We've always had tax issues with this organizations. We're hopeful that this year is the last year that we have to involve ourselves with past taxes. I'd like to move on to the second licensee I'd like to discuss, which is Schwinn Group. And they're one of my favorites to talk about because they're a real success story in my judgment. Schwinn Group, you might recall, was not always Schwinn Group. It at one time was operated by a company named Flora, and Flora did a lot of construction on their 7 or 8 principal buildings, none of which was permitted, and they wound up with almost all of their facilities under a red tag, under administrative citation. We really were this close to closing them down flat out. The issues there really had its root in conflict between the licensee and the landlord, and less so with the city. So we tried to stay out of that. They were able to make payroll throughout this period of time. And in fact, during the last 18 months, Schwinn Group, which is the largest privately owned cannabis company in the world, did a site selection process, and we were a candidate for them to move to, and they agreed despite the red tags and the tax indebtedness, all of the problems that were associated with the site. They loved it. So Schwinn Group moved in. They did everything that we had asked of them to obtain their regulatory permit. You may recall that in Chapter 528, the operations plan is exhaustive. It strikes at the heart of what was of primary interest to Sacramento. Things like ownership. The state wanted to know who's going to own these cannabis companies, and they also wanted to know what their capitalization looked like, how much money they had, and they wanted to ensure that the profits from cannabis would stay inside the state, or at least not go towards places that they should belong. That spirit String Group has been really a really wonderful partner. On let's see, it was in October, I believe. Let me check my notes. In October, that's right, October 4th, they obtained their certificate of occupancy, which meant that work on the site was sufficient for their certificate of occupancy, and that construction was valuated at $2 million, $1.8 million. So that was $1.8 million worth of problems that they had on the site. And so, we stopped it. Not everybody on the same page to work together to get them legal, compliant with the building code and the requirements of the regulatory permit. And it took a long time. It took about 18 months. $2 million later, we just recently issued the regulatory permit for 2024, and more importantly, their certificate of occupancy, because the regulatory permit, a little tiny bit, provides some discretion on subjective issues. The building code and the certificate of occupancy doesn't allow any subjective issues at all. You either are compliant with the building code or you're not. So getting the certificate of occupancy was a really big deal. It's also worth noting that that operation is subject to the caps on taxation. Also, they paid $1.1 million on their cap for a total of $1.295 million total tax receipts for this year. Not one time have they been late their tax payments. So just a year and change into this relationship. The String Group has been a very strong leader, not only in the industry statewide, but a strong partner to have in the city. Next, 689 El Camino Real is home to Next Wave. Next Wave originally began as Mazatec. It was one of the original 13 licensees back in 2017. They ceased operations for a considerable amount of time, just retooled everything because it wasn't working out. They were indebted to the city for taxes at about $100,000. They paid it, stopped operations, and began to really rehabilitate not only their operation, but the entire site. You'll notice that they've spent a considerable sum of money in tenant improvements. I think you all toured their facility. It really is state of the art. And in discussing with the executives of these facilities, they believe that should cannabis be removed from Schedule C at the federal level, that the quality of flower, the quality of the product will become a significant niche advantage, because we're able to grow it, to grow cannabis and keep it clean and without pesticides and unknown chemicals that you'll find in the illicit grows and in illicit outdoor grows. They're very controlled environments, really just about laboratories. They really are laboratories. Next Wave recently had a 20,000 square foot metal building approved. This licensee also has invested significantly in the aesthetics of their site. They are concerned about landscaping. The wrought iron fence was really their idea. There's about 1,000 square feet of linear wrought iron fence around their facility, which is a stark contrast from the barbed wire that used to be there previously. their existing regulatory permit extends through March of 2024. So we're getting geared up to review their operations plan as well, so that they can be join the rest of the licensees on the standard calendar. It's almost expired. We thought about issuing them a new one for 2024, but given their flux with regard to their development agreement, vis-a-vis their new development, we thought we'd just wait and review their regulatory permit when their existing permit expires. Next Wave has remit $131,345 in taxes to the city this year. The fourth licensee I'd like to talk about is Panda. It's good to refer to them as doing business as Panda today instead of 4648 4th Street, because as you might recall, 4648 4th Street also was red tagged. In 2021, the ownership changed at that facility, you may recall, and the new property owner failed to register the facility with the city as required in 1528. And this caused a lot of problems because for about 8 months, we had no idea what was going on the site, either in construction or for use in the site. So we started meeting with who amounted to the contractors on the site, and it took quite a long time to really get to the ownership. And finally, we obtained the proper paperwork from the ownership. The city council the red tag was in front of the city council for consideration because much of you might recall, they had the electrical conduit affixed to the various elevations, and we were very concerned about the fact that the proper building permits had not been pulled for those. But we were pleased to say that as it turns out, the workmanship was stellar. The construction workmanship was just top shelf. They just apparently had an aversion getting the proper permits before they did the construction. So we today have a really strong relationship with the property owner, and we issued the regulatory permit so they could begin operations today or yesterday. I think it was this morning, but we're really excited about that. They received their certificate of occupancy on December 1st. So just a week ago almost. So that has been, it's very current. We've been working hard to get them in business. They've been shut down for probably a year. Between a year and 18 months. So they are ready to go. They're excited to be in Greenfield, and the property owner is going to be, I'm sure, a strong partner in the city. They too have invested approximately $3.5–4 million in evaluated construction into the facility itself. And you may ask why we know that. When we issue the building permits, the valuation on the construction is reviewed by the building official, and that number has to be acceptable to the building official for a variety of reasons. So that number is vetted, if you will. Finally, our fifth licensee is the higher level dispensary, the only dispensary in our city. And for a long time, it was the only dispensary in South Monterey County. I don't know, frankly, if that's still the case. It was rumored that one in King City was preparing to open not too long ago. The dispensary, pardon me, since it's open, has enjoyed $6.9 million in sales and has paid $276,000 in taxes to the city. Their regulatory permit issued in November for the upcoming calendar year. So that concludes my detailed report and summary of the staff report regarding the cannabis operators in the city. But overall, I'd like to hear if there's any questions. I'll try and answer them, or if there's tweaks to the regulatory scheme that we've applied through the years. You think there's improvements, things that we could be doing differently. I will say that we appreciate the decision makers in the city being very patient with the community development department, because as you notice, we've had some when we in 2019 was when the city procured iWork software so that we could track many of these things. But you'll notice that in 2019, none of the operators had valid regulatory permits, none. And all of them were behind in their taxes when we obtained the software and got serious about learning what really is going on in the cannabis industry. So we've had 2 red tag, we've lost 3 companies, we've had a upward trajectory for revenues to the city, and it appears that the industry itself has really stabilized. You'll read reports about failures in the unincorporated areas of the county and in other jurisdictions, north in Santa Cruz and in other locations. And most of our partners will acknowledge the warm relationship that they have with the city. And so we've been able to employ hundreds of people among the licensees, and also during the, we'll call them fish locations, we'll say when 2 of the facilities were under red tag, payroll was met on 2 of them, only 1. We had to send staff away where they were not allowed to occupy the premises. So we've come a long way, but certainly we're always trying to improve our regulatory scheme to really welcome cannabis and exploit it, frankly, to the best of our ability. We think we have an industry that others don't have, and for better or for worse, many aspire to have what we have in our city. So we'll just hope for a strong year in 2024, and I'm pretty confident we'll be in front of the Planning Commission, most likely regarding the development agreements. According to the revised schedule, we were going to have the operating permits issued first, all at the same time, if possible, get very close. And following that, we want to update the development agreements so that they serve as a contract between the city and the operator, and all of them need to be updated. So we're going to work and get those to the city council as soon as possible. That concludes my comments, Madam Chair.
Did you want to go over the community relations activities
Oh, yeah.
part? Or do you want questions from us now on what you've presented so far?
No, I can comment on that. Thank you very much, because it's an area of great interest in the community, and the needs that are the needs reflected in that part of the code that requires our licensees to participate in the community and give back to the community really fit well into the Chamber of Commerce. If the Chamber of Commerce did not have tax problems with the franchise tax board, which they do. For about a dozen years, the Chamber didn't pay its taxes. And so, pardon me. On almost a year now, we've been working with the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board to get the chamber reinstated. The Greenfield Chamber of Commerce dates back to World War II, with its earliest references dating back to 1913. Actually, first Mayor Tom Rogers was the secretary of the Chamber of Commerce, and they did a lot of terrific work on a regular basis. They hosted 100-person dinners and heard from speakers throughout Monterey County on topics of interest. At the time, the war was going on, and Boy Scouts, and a lot of your normal civic interests were really advanced during the time when the True Chamber was fully engaged in the work that it's supposed to be engaged in. All of the cannabis licensees have pledged just unqualified support for the chamber and really are waiting to write checks in support of that and to provide personnel to the board to support a sophisticated chamber. By sophisticated, I mean a chamber that has funds to recruit membership. And this will tie into the commercial economic development briefing that's hopefully to follow. And really the nonprofit, the presence of our nonprofits throughout the community. We have a large number of them, and the Chamber of Commerce provides great hope that we can really maximize this philanthropic community service, civic service responsibilities that, a chamber would normally perform if they can. We have our clearance from the IRS for its tax exemption. The accountant has provided back paperwork for every year that the chamber did not pay California taxes, so that hopefully the Franchise Tax Board will reinstate the chamber without too much trouble. And of course, when they do that, they'll find an organization with the resources to pay its income taxes for sure. That'd be number one. But it's a real void right now, Madam Chair. It's a void that hasn't been fulfilled yet. And of course, none of us here had anything to do with the collapse of the former chamber. But we're not able to do business right now until the Franchise Tax Board reinstates us. And it's a legal process to do that. And we're fully engaged in that. In fact, frankly, we're waiting for a letter any day now for reinstatement. But given this, the Franchise Tax Board could be tomorrow. It might be a couple months from now. We don't know.
You done?
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you for that staff report. I can open public comments on this. Anybody would like to comment on the status of cannabis licenses and other information that was just presented? Chambers? Hands raised? Email?
No hands raised.
Okay. We'll close public comments and move on to Planning Commission discussion and comments. Let's start to my left. Mr. Vasquez, do you have any comments or questions? Commissioner Gallardo?
I do. When a cannabis industry that's in operations here in Greenville, if they're late with their taxes, are they assessed a penalty?
They are assessed penalty. They are, yes.
Okay, so are they given like a time frame? It's like, okay, you've got whatever, and then if they surpass that time frame, then they're assessed a penalty, or are they given like a 30-day, 60-day window or anything like that?
Well, we follow the code as close we can, and I don't believe they have a grace period before the penalties are applied. The way it usually plays out is when we had really two that got into a lot of trouble. The way it usually plays out, they get so far in debt that it's really too much to pay. So usually there's an agreement when we work out a payment plan with them. Once we get a payment plan worked out, it's really a contract, an enforceable contract. Becomes an accounts receivable, and during that time, usually the fees and penalties are either waived or deferred, depending on performance. If they pay up and get even, the fees are either waived or deferred. And that's usually done by the city manager, not in my level.
And over here at Loudpad, those buildings that burned down. I mean, they've been sitting there for what? Long time. Let's see. Are there any plans to refurbish those?
No.
So, say this. When those were in operation, the city was getting bigger tax rates from them, correct?
Correct.
So now because of that, the city is losing money.
Well, yes and no. Commissioner Villardo, what happened is they, when they sold the property, the request was formally made to the city to nix that square feet, amend their permit so that it's not not taxed. We agreed to that with the new ownership. So, and interestingly, the previous year before they were sold to Harborside, the community development department processed 12 applications for building permits for replacement greenhouses, and they pulled none. So it was kind of a ruse by the previous operators, thinking they were leading us to believe that they would replace them. And it turned out at the end they had no intention of replacing them. And I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but that's kind of what happened. And so we said, well, let's clear the books then. So we took the permitted square feet number and reduced it accordingly so it reflects what's going on. That said, this regulatory permit period warrants a tour of the facility to make sure that their floor plans correspond with what we think it should be, because we have not inspected in there in years.
So, but do you plan on doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
But building a few facts, I talked to him today about this.
Yeah. So, in your personal opinion, has the revenue that the city has gotten from cannabis industry, has it exceeded or what the expectations were, or is it less than what the expectation was? I realize that this is your opinion, and that's all I'm going.
Well, no, thank you for asking that question, because it's a great question. It's a great question because it turned out this industry is extremely fluid. I mean, the industry themselves. I'll get to. I'll answer your question directly, and then in a little bit. The direct answer to your question is that it's about where I would expect it to be. Not too high. Originally, the projections were way outlandish. There's no way that these things are going to bring in that kind of money. That was true. And then the other problems when you speak, pardon me, when you speak to the operators, there's still the illicit grows, and that's driving that they have to compete with the illicit grows that have no regulation, no taxes, no nothing, and law enforcement also at the highest level have yet to make that much of a priority, because it wasn't long ago where the same that law enforcement were putting people in jail for marijuana, and now all of a sudden they're not doing it. They're not enforcing against the illicit grows, and it causes the legal operators a lot of frustration, because they have to put up with me and the city and their taxes and all of that. So they're paying the cap that we have gives them an incentive to expand and become stable, because the more without the cap, the more they grow and the more they expand, it gets to a point of diminishing returns where they have to find a perfect place where the government's not taking all of their money. And this is, I think, an incentive for some to locate in Greenfield. So I think that original projections were much higher than what became the truth. And one thing that I learned, and I think most of the staff in the community development department that work with the bills and the invoicing and these relationships realize, is that it's amazing how much money $1 million is. Sometimes in our normal lives we read about things, $1 million here, $1 million there. $1 million is a tremendous amount of money in terms of its utility to the city. It's enabled the city to do things that it otherwise wouldn't be able to do financially, for better or for worse, because we're not segregating that money. It's goes right into the general fund, but right now, we're on a clip of about 2.3 million a year. So that's significant resources for police, fire. That's what I was going to say. But more importantly, and we'll probably touch on this in the economic development portion, but these revenues also provide financial stability to the city and capacity for debt. We have greater capacity for increased debt should we choose to go that route for larger investments, whether it's the wastewater treatment plant or things that might need to occur for a new downtown, not a new downtown, but we have interesting challenges in the downtown area if we want to create somewhere that's not quite as congested and that is pedestrian oriented. There's some tweaks that probably need to occur in the downtown. One, just as an example, and I don't mind saying this because this was an issue 25 years ago when we did our current general plan, but the automotive uses in the downtown, right in the core downtown, there is a legal non-conforming use. Ideally, in like aspiration, we aspire, we hope that someday they will go away because they belong as an industrial use. And that hasn't happened during this general plan. Like, we're about to do a new general plan, and they may never relocate. They may never relocate, in which case we'll figure out a way to work around it, but really there are auto vehicle repair uses in the core downtown.
Well, the primary reason that I asked you about what you thought about the money's coming in, but I've spoken to individuals and they said, from their perspective, that they thought that the cannabis industry was trying to locate here in town, that they were embellishing their figures to try to entice people into letting them come in. But then contrary to that, I've heard people say, well, they've more than, done their part to get the revenue to the city, but I guess it's all subject to conjecture, which you want to believe, though. But from my perspective, I think any monies we can get from them is beneficial to the community. And you can use, like you were just mentioning, different areas. And I was for it all along, but that's neither here nor there. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner, do you have any comments or questions?
I think I have a couple questions.
Could you use your mic, please?
On New Wave, I noticed that nursery is not being taxed.
Thank you for that question. I did not mention this. The nursery is it's depicted two different ways in my staff report, and I apologize for that because the nursery isn't a permit type. The nursery is cultivation, but it's taxed differently. So on some of the charts, I set it aside. So the nursery is taxed just differently than the cultivation, the normal cultivation number, but it is taxed. In the and you'll find the tax formula for it in the attachment on your report.
And the other one is Panda distribution. I see it's not available.
Thank you. He's identified all my mistakes. The distribution, all of the licensees, they have a distribution permit, but none of them are taxed. We've got three types: manufacturing, cultivation, and distribution for the types of permit. And each of the licensees has a distribution permit that allows them to move it around, move their cannabis. None of it is taxed. There's no tax associated with the distribution permit.
Okay. No one that I want. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hedens. Commissioner, Vice Chair Spalding.
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay. I just have a couple of comments. So we were all around when cannabis came to town, and it was quite controversial, both, with the community, politically, and just morally. It was a big deal. I remember coming to meetings with Pat Chambers, pros and cons, for and against, but I do recall a flyer going out with the projected revenues of $40 million if all of the operations would come. And, I agree with Commissioner Gallardo that, that probably played a role in letting it come to town. It's unfortunate that it didn't pan out to be that. I do appreciate you keeping track of our numbers here, because I see a lot on social media, and I hear public comments from the community about where's the cannabis money, how much is it, and why aren't we spending it here or spending it there? So I don't know if this information is on the website, but I appreciate that you're tracking it, because we need to be able to answer. Apparently, we have to keep answering that question, although I know it's been answered at workshops by the city manager. It's been addressed at city council, but if we could just keep, that information out there, because I really don't like the accusatory tone that it's not there. It's not the amount that we were told it would be. Definitely, I agree with that, because the original projections were, like I said, 40 million annually. And over 10 years, a 10-year period, it's 10 million. So that's a big difference. And I understand where the confusion is coming in, but the facts are the facts, the numbers are the numbers. And if we could just somehow keep maybe use the community relations component in that so that we can keep reminding the community that this is what we have. I understand it's general fund money. It can be spent anywhere within the city, but just knowing that this is the figure and these are our projections would help because, every year the city goes over the budget. And if the community wants money spent somewhere, that's where they can suggest that. So there is money. I'm grateful for the money. And I'm grateful that despite everything that happened, that we did actually pioneer this industry coming to a jurisdiction. And while we did expect 13 or 17 facilities, I think the number that we have is perfect so far. I mean, it's not overwhelming. It's been productive. You've been working together nicely and developed good relationships, and I hope they continue. I do read a lot about this industry and the struggles that they have with taxing. And, I watched I don't know if I can say this, but, the canopy growth stock just, tumbling to basically nothing. And I think that, our story is a good story on this, and that I hope it continues to go well. So again, thank you for that. As far, again, as the community relations, I know you're waiting for the Chamber of Commerce to fix its troubles, but in the meantime, they've been here since 2017. I know each year certain groups have reached out for donations, and that's probably, not the best way to do it. But if we could work on that, because I know that we have events, we have signature events, and I know they help out when they can.
They do.
But if it could be more standardized and easy, like an annual donation that goes into a pot that's available for certain events, but that's probably not our fault. That's just a suggestion. And I really appreciate this table of facilities. I'm just wondering, when Greenfield Organics at 525 and 1071, when they first came, they went through the process and then it changed ownership. That wasn't really publicized, was it?
No, not really, no. But they were in litigation, actually. The property owner and the licensee were in litigation.
Okay.
And it was, I guess no litigation, it's only friendly. It was not a pleasant situation at all. And I couldn't believe it. They had all of their principal buildings. They were just building away. And they were taking out beams fundamental to the structure of buildings and the whole works. They did about $2 million worth of damage to the site. And we just stopped it and a little bit of risk with allowing the employees to stay there with an agreement, legally binding agreement against the property owner. And it was a lucky call that we were able to get the work done. Nobody got hurt. Today they're okay.
Well, I really appreciate all the work that you and your department have done to get everything back on track and to establish a system where there's annual oversight or oversight as needed. And I think that things are going well. I'm excited to see that Panda got their license and their certificate of occupancy issued. Did the conduit end up going on the roof?
No,
Okay.
did not. Well, Madam Chair, your comments were especially important because recently, and I can't be more specific, unfortunately, but I was called into an environment in question, intensely about what's going on in the city, and thought it was an environment that it wasn't. And yeah, and it was about a 2-hour drilling. They said the reason that you're here, by the way, is because you have been doing, not me, but the city of Greenfield has done such a good job with cannabis. We needed to know what's going on down there because so many other places have had such trouble, which I thought was really not funny, but it was a surprise. Appreciate your comments, and so does, I'm sure, everybody on our staff, because when you read through chapter 15, it's much more in depth than meets the eye, and we have, inch submittals that's all confidential, it's all proprietary for these companies, and we need to see it and vet it. So, in many respects, it's a plus for the city.
Yeah.
It's a real plus.
Well, if you think about it, it's really been 6 to 7 years
7 years.
since the beginning. So, I mean, not every new industry starts out smoothly or, lives up to the representations it makes at the beginning. But I think overall we're doing good, and we're smoothing things out where they need to be smoothed out. So just we need to work on that community relations aspect of it, because I really, it bothers me to hear those comments and mistrust in the community. I'd like to fix that.
We will take care of that. We will focus on that.
Thank you. So if there's no other comments, we can move on to our second item under other business, which is, please.
That where they started construction over here on El Camino Real. I can't remember what company was going to do that, but they did all the underground work and everything, and they did the fire hydrants, and now it's this total mess. And it doesn't look good coming into town. Are they on the process of doing something about that?
Is that at a cannabis company?
I think that was going to be Golden State, right?
I think so. They were coming in. What happened was they went in and did all the construction, all that ground construction, all that thing. And I guess they had an issue with the contractor that was doing it, and it came to a dead stop. So
Is this on the east side of El Camino Real, and they have the stubs out in the
right.
hills and everything?
Loudpack took a lot of their stuff, dirt and their stuff.
Oh, maybe that was Red Hunt. That was going to be across the way. I don't know. There's been a lot of names, so.
Well, that's something we have to work on this year. That parcel belongs to Loud Harborside, Loudpack, and they're not interested in developing it. Is the most recent information, and we haven't spent any time addressing it. So we'll make that a priority this year, because it's really an eyesore. We haven't done anything about it.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, when I was riding through town on my bicycle, there was some people out there in the tractor, and they were dumping dirt out there. Yeah, that's right. I just assumed that it was the original people who were going to work there.
I don't know. They should. I know they would have an issue with the contractor, the contract not getting paid, so they were in a lawsuit with them and everything. Everything come to it, didn't stop.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's a good question. We'll follow up with that. I think that's an important follow-up issue. It's been bugging me for a few years. I hope that they were going to develop that. That was all originally going to be part of a Loudpack operation, and it just never became much of anything. It's not even for sale, as far as I can tell.
They do have you do have some kind of way to make them maintain it so it doesn't become blighted and terrible, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so now, anything else? Okay, now we'll move on to a report from city staff on overview for economic development plans for the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'll try and be brief on this also. But again, sometimes it's good to just have a conversation instead of the PowerPoints and everything. But the economic development, I'm really excited about during this year because there's so much ongoing activity. LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, LAFCO, in a recent staff report last week, had Greenfield's total valuation for $974 million, meaning that's like the assessed value of our entire community. Well, in the last 4 years, we have put $243 million in the last 4 years in valuated construction development. So that's not a bad clip when the total is 974 million, and we've issued 1,804 permits during that time. This is since 2019, and again, it's worth noting before 2019 we couldn't track this information. We didn't know, so it's always good to say that we're more than we've ever known before. But in that spirit, 560 building licenses were issued this calendar year, and that's more than we've ever had recorded. So that's quite a bit. That said, there's a few priorities if you can break it all down to, the high strategic values, what we're trying to accomplish at a high level. And they're really, number one is something we haven't done in a long time, if ever, and that's we've contracted with an economic development expert, Capital Rivers, out of Sacramento. And the contract there is a 3-year contract, $300,000 contract, and the goal is that they are going to provide, expert consulting services to help us recruit commercial to the city and help improve our downtown. So there's a lot of components to that, from research, analysis, marketing, strategy, connections. We have our ICSC brochure that they're working on. They've been working on it since San Diego in preparation for the ICSC conference that is going to be held in Monterey. So they have 32,000 contacts that this material is going to be circulated towards. These folks will be focusing on the strengths and weaknesses in the city to attract the kind of development that both we can accommodate and that we can get based on our attributes and demerits, I guess, count. So our relationship with Capital Rivers, and you will meet Capital Rivers in January. In January, we are scheduled to host a roundtable starring the principal at Roundtable has agreed to be a panelist. His name is Greg Aguirre. Also, the panelist is the broker for the Walnut Avenue specific plan will be in attendance. He's in San Jose based, and then also the owner of the iconic Corn Nuts site has agreed to participate. We're looking for a couple of others, but we're going to nail that down for a January Economic Development Roundtable, and we hope that we can have an outreach that produce the hundreds of people that were as interested in cannabis that might be interested in the people that have the capability to create real jobs in the community. So that's happening in January. The second high priority that we have is business retention. It's really important to take care of businesses who are here now and doing business today. So there's an important focus on that. And then a third priority in the 2024 timeframe is to do the best we can to develop the lands that have already been annexed to the city. That would include Yanks, the 200 acres South End annexation parcels, and the third, the 150 single family houses that is referred to as Miramonte. That's a tentative map now. But that's important for a few reasons. Number one is that until those annexations are predominantly developed or completed, the city won't be able to annex any further lands. And if you review our sphere of influence, we are slated to grow a little bit further to the northeast of the city. So we want to develop our annexed lands, and there are significant amounts. And Rivers has done a lot of analysis with the South End annexation acreage. It's about 200 acres. It was initially anticipated and thought that it would be ideal for commercial and industrial and residential uses. I pressed in this devil's advocate aggressively about the attractiveness of that parcel, and the firm is very excited about that 200 acres. It's 200 acres abutting 101, both east and west, with interchanges. So there's some real merits, virtues to that piece. So we want to develop our annexed lands. And then fourth, and this may manifest in various things this year, but we want to protect our resources. Water, sewer infrastructure needs improvements, and as you're well aware, we're working on that now. And also our streets and parking are issues that we'd like to find some solutions to them. I've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again because we don't view these parking challenges as something that just happens and can't be addressed. You know, we really want to attempt to put the brain power towards solving the problem so the community works. In DC, in Washington, DC, Capitol Hill got so congested, the entire circumference around the Capitol requires a parking permit. It's just, that's what it became in the District of Columbia because the parking was so bad. It's not going to get that bad in the city, but we want to take significant efforts to address some of these problems. And that's not unlike code enforcement. We think that there's low-hanging fruit in the area of code enforcement that really could be addressed. When you look at the downtown, whether our city is a clean city, or whether our garbage disposal systems really serve the community well, I think is an open question. We do have an abundance of trash containers strewn about it. Odd locations throughout the city, that type of thing. We want to try and address low-hanging fruit so the city appears clean, it appears comfortable to the eye. So that's an important consideration. So those are our four top priorities, but a few things that Capitol Rivers is going to focus on. I mentioned this already: commercial recruitment, the downtown revitalization to attract the right commercial entities to our downtown, and strategic planning in retail, in entertainment. That's where we expect Capitol Rivers to provide certain expertise that we haven't had previously. In that effort, they're going to prepare an index of the vacant land. We want to inventory all of our available parcels that are available. We've got a lot of it, probably, including the infill, probably 400 acres. The Yanks Air Museum has been around for 30 years. We're about up to here with when is Yanks going to be done. with the general plan process coming up and an RV park, it's pretty ripe for either something to happen there or not. But we need some activity to happen on the on the Yanks site. I mentioned that the Monterey ICSC, which is among the ICSC events, we're told is one of the most productive, and we hope that we'll have as profound a presence as we can possibly generate. We've been in the news lately for good news in housing and the cannabis industry, and we really aren't shy about our goal to exploit that so that we can attract maybe newcomers willing to invest capital in our community and create jobs. So we're going to create an inventory of the land. I mentioned the roundtable, and we think that the roundtable event in January should really present new ideas, new initiatives, and that I expected to have more to talk about, but that covers my main priorities for economic development. I wanted to touch on mainly the new things that you may not have learned before. On December 14th, I have a written report similar to the cannabis that is going to the city council. I would add, though, that the cannabis industry, that's a component of the economic development in and of itself. It employs hundreds of people as we speak, and so there's a lot of different prongs to economic development, and everybody has a lot of opinions and a lot of things to say about it. And so, I'll be quiet and listen to you for a while because it's really important. We only have so much commercial land, and this is the only land that creates finances for the city, for sustainability. All of you, I'm sure, remember it wasn't very long ago when we had a law enforcement problem in our community. We had hundreds of people protesting City Hall over our first responders, law enforcement, and for the most part, entirely in my judgment, that issue has been settled. But remember, it wasn't very long ago where we had deep conflict in the community, and the kind of conflict that simply won't attract anybody to invest millions of dollars. And it's to your credit and the credit of the city council that you have created the stability to allow professional staff to do what we're supposed to do, keeping us sharp by being critical in your work. And it really pays off because there were days when a Starbucks would not come to Greenfield, and that Starbucks in our city is in the top. It's in the top 78 percentile of all Starbucks in the state of California. So it does great. And I don't want to disclose names, but prominent businesses have commented that this past year has been the most profitable year that they've ever had. So when you hear that coming from a restaurateur, that's really good news, especially since we're not that far removed from the pandemic. So I guess that concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much for that report, Mr. Mugen. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Okay, we'll close public comments and move on to Planning Commission discussion and comments. Let's start at this side now, Commissioner Arquidez. Vice Chair. Okay, we'll leave the floor open for a bit. Commissioner Vasquez.
You're talking about
Your mic, please.
you're talking about the Cali scans. in the city. And one of the questions. My question is, why in the front of the post office you had a small container? White, and you had in the front. Now that people, when they come in, I know, throw the boxes, throw everything outside the post office. Sometimes when you come there, it's all over the town, the boxes and the papers. And the town, especially in the town, you need to put a big containers for the garbage, bigger, because put a small one. And second, you need to put what is the garbage and what is against the plastic cans, what's the recyclers. Because a lot of people don't understand it. This is what happened. When you need to clean the town, then wait. This is my question.
Well, I haven't talked to the boss about this, the city manager, but it's a high priority. The garbage containers.
It's still more. It's still more. The garbage containers in the town is very more. The people throw everything. When you think COVID, when something, throw in the streets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
That's,
Thank you.
thank you.
Commissioner Gallardo?
Yeah. Kind of following of what Commissioner Vasquez was talking about. Perhaps we see garbage, for lack of a better word, garbage out in the streets because the containers are too small. And one thing that sticks in my mind when I was in the military, this my DI told me, says, first time they see you is the way they're going to remember you. So if people come into our community and they see, trash here and trash there, they're going to remember that. Anyways, but okay, let's get away from that. So you spoke briefly about parking. Yeah. His favorite. Yeah. Anyway, I think from my perspective, parking and housing go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And if we had more affordable housing, I don't think maybe we would have the difficulties that we're occurring with parking now, where you have multiple families living in one home because they can't afford to live somewhere else or somewhere else isn't available. So they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, you solve one and maybe you'll solve the other. But I mean, that's nothing that's like you said, it's going to be solved overnight. Those problems they're going to linger for some time until we come up with the proper solutions. So, yeah, and I'm in agreement with Commissioner Vasquez that perhaps we should have bigger containers and maybe not just in front of the post office, but throughout the community. Yeah, that'd be a good idea. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. So I like your plans for economic development. I'm excited to see what the Capital Rivers Group is going to present. And what is ICSC? What does that stand for? Because I keep thinking ICSC. See that? It's on Elm, but that's not it, right?
It's the International Conference of Shopping Centers of all things.
Okay.
ICSC.
Okay. And that they're having a conference in Monterey.
Yes.
And who from our city is going?
That hasn't been decided, but pretty much I would imagine, whoever wants to go, but we obviously city leadership and anyone who's excited about the city, but Mr. Guerrero with Capital Rivers he'll be leading the team because he already knows many of these people, and as many elected senior officials, elected and appointed officials who can represent the city is a strong thing. They want to see you there.
Could we go?
Of course, absolutely.
Is there any interest in attending?
Yeah.
I think I'd mentioned it in the past. I would like to attend.
Absolutely. We're planning for you to attend.
Okay, good, 'cause
Yeah.
it's pretty close. Monterey's close, so we don't have to. I know it's not Las Vegas, but you know,
Yeah.
at least we can get there on our own.
Well, in time, we can follow up once we make that impression, because a lot of times it's these things don't happen right away overnight. But you make that good impression, they look at your material and investigate further. It helps that we have, you know, the Marriott's comment. We've got I met with Paul Peter Singh this, you know, late last week. He's developing the Walnut Visitor Center, which is the Jamba Juice, and he expects to be done no later than February. And that site, you may know, it's going up now. It's starting to look like a building now. So that's a plus. And, you know, just north of there, EAH they put in their sewer lines late last week. So interestingly enough, on the EAH project, we're trying to secure their travel plan, because that's a serious issue, that when they drop those buggers in the city, they're not knocking out traffic lights and telephone poles or anything else. So we want to escort them, make sure that they don't do any of that. And they may need to travel around the city and come in Elm, really a circuitous route, in case their load is too large, that puts our own facilities at risk, because they're rolling the prefabricated units into the site.
You know when?
And they're talking in the next 2 weeks,
Yeah,
but
maybe.
they haven't gotten that's not their travel plan, but there's their plan
Mhm.
approved yet by Public Works and the police department.
Yeah.
We're insisting on it.
Yeah,
a plan
maybe
that
Elm
works.
to, I don't think they could get to Second Street very easily, because it's kind of bumpy.
Yeah.
Down there, but yeah,
And they might go west,
yeah.
and then obviously west around the city that way.
Okay.
So, Chair, I will let you know how that develops if you'd like, so you know.
And also, as lastly on the ICSC, is it a problem if a quorum goes? Can we all go, or can only two go? Or if you can figure that out and let us know, that's fine. You don't have to answer.
Sure.
But I mean, okay. And then lastly, when's the craft beer bar going to open?
That I don't know. I was at the site today. I don't know. It looks good. It looks good.
I keep driving by and.
I don't. Sign is up. We'll get back to you on that and find out the property owner.
Did they submit a name?
I don't know. I haven't heard of a name yet. Anybody? We haven't heard
Okay.
from the Barones.
All right. Well, if there's no other comments, we can move. Okay.
Are we moving on to comments?
Yes. After, well, Bob has. This is on the economic development. Okay, yeah, please.
My question is, how are we coming along with the signs for Greenfield?
I don't.
Okay.
Braulio, do you have an update on that,
I can
sir?
give an update on that. They're currently in their building permit process. They just completed first review. I know Evelyn completed their review today. They did have comments from the building department, and Jamie, the director, is the person in charge of this project, and she received the comments from the building department today. So we're currently waiting on them updating the plans to reflect the changes asked for by the building department and resubmit for a second review.
Also, when is that roundtable gonna, have you set a date for that roundtable?
No, it was supposed to take place in November, and I couldn't get everybody scheduled together. Which these are important people, and so no, but it has to take place in January. And I've got commitments from all of the panelists. So, did you have some thoughts about that by chance?
Interesting.
Early or well, I want to have it as soon as possible because I'm kind of excited about the new year. I think a lot of good information will come of it, but I also want some people to show up. I don't know how that's accomplished, but we'll work the social media and do the best we can to try and get the word out because I think that these individuals that will be here will really have some good things to say both about our strengths and weaknesses and how to go about things. Like I said, that's the broker who's been brokering, all of the Walnut Avenue specific plan parcels. And there's another 30 acres south of that yet to be developed. We're processing a subdivision map on that now. And of course, the ownership of the Corn Nut site is these are significant developers. And Mr. Aguirre, I want to leave it at that. We have room for others. If you have any ideas who might be able to contribute, we have 3 very strong roundtable panelists. So we could, I think, no more than 5 would be appropriate, but we hope that we'll set it up so it's a warm environment, not a dire situation. I want to have an intimate environment where people can ask questions and really talk to these people and have a really good workshop. Not unlike the time we used to have for like Prop 68 and development of the park. So the community really showed up and told us what they really wanted in the park. So we'll try and do that. I know, Chair, you were very involved in that.
Okay, well, all right, thank you. We'll move on to H, comments from Planning Commission and staff. Does staff have any comments?
I don't have any comments. Claudio, do you have anything we need to announce?
Yes, let me just share it on the big screen.
We have a workshop on the rental ordinance that we've been working on. And
yeah, so we're going to have a workshop on the rental registration. It's going to be on Thursday, December 14th. It's going to be here at the Chambers. The Spanish one or the English one is going to take place from 5 to 6 p.m. and the Spanish from 6 to 7 p.m.
Thank you. Any other comments from staff?
Answer your question about whether or not the entire commission or a quorum of commission can attend the conference. And you can all attend. We just typically recommend you don't all sit together and that you definitely don't discuss any city business.
Thank you. Okay, so commission comments?
Yeah. I have a question. Do we have an update on Cheezers? The new Cheezers pizza?
an update on what?
Cheezers Pizza? Or California Gourmet Pizza?
Oh, I suppose I can give an update. They're very slow. They are working on building plans. They've changed the design a little bit. It was not, when this was in front of the Planning Commission, Commissioner Zavala, it was never clear to staff that they were intending to drop a metal prefabricated building at that site. And I blocked and said that that's not going to be acceptable to the planning commission. And they made the valid point that the elevations, the site plans that you reviewed and approved is what they intended to put. What was never disclosed to us in was that it was a prefabricated metal building. So I have been working with them to ensure that the aesthetics of that building matches its location. The metal was, I don't think, going to be acceptable for us. And I've been working with them, and that they have committed to stucco on it and articulating the building significantly so that its aesthetics are appropriate.
Most likely it's gonna come before us again, or
I'm just going to jump in because this item isn't on the agenda. It is okay to ask, simple questions, but not to engage in any discussion on the item.
Okay, well, I have a comment too that is not on the agenda. It's regarding appointments and vacancies. I just want to mention that I noticed on I don't know whose page, that applications are going to be accepted up until December 29th, I believe. And our meeting in January. So if applications are closed on December 29th, we meet January 2nd, supposedly, and council meets after us. Will we have a full forum here? And lastly, if we could please know whose term is up so they know to reapply.
Yeah, I can look at your bylaws and see what happens if a term expires and no new commissioner has been appointed, because I suspect that the seated commissioner would just continue until a new commissioner was appointed, but I'm not entirely sure. So I can look at your bylaws and then I can just send you an email or provide an update at this is the December meeting. Okay. I'll send you an email update on that.
Okay. Yeah, because with 3 vacancies, then only 2 of us remain.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know, Paul, which commissioners' terms are ending.
Me,
Okay. They know.
already applied again.
Yeah.
I was approached by Ann about getting, if I was one continue. She said I had to have a letter into the city council before their December meeting. But that's what I was told, so I sent in my letter already to it.
Okay. Sounds like the two conflict between what you were saying and Chair Garcia. So we can look into that.
Well, I've also submitted my letter for their requests, and so I'm just hoping. I actually sent the correspondence after I submitted my letter to make sure that they had received it, but I never got a response. So I'm just hoping they did receive it and they were neglectful in responding to it.
I turned mine into that.
I can read my letter too.
Okay. So I think we established where the 3 vacancies are coming from. Okay, great. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a question here. Several weeks back, a couple of months anyways, there was a family in here, a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Soto, they lived right down the street from him. And they wanted to put in this massive deck. And there was a neighbor who was against it. Was that ever resolved?
It never came back. We tabled it, I think, and it never got back to it. They should be like that.
Which project was that, Commissioner? I didn't hear that.
It was a design review for a deck on the second story. I believe was it Syrah or Tuscany?
Sorry,
With the street Tuscany or Syrah?
oh, the street that goes right around, as you pass your place, and then you make a quick left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you ran that one.
I haven't seen that project return.
No say.
Yeah, well, you were here for it. Anyway, my second question is, as I'm riding through town, which I do a lot, I saw some extensive work going over on a property that's just north of Corn Nuts, between Corn Nuts and Cherry. And they were doing some extensive work out there, digging, a lot of digging and putting in these massive pipes and stuff. I'm just curious what that's all about.
Well, I don't know the time frame, but that sounds near the location where it would have been Shrine Group and the ownership connected sewer to the city system. That's probably what you're referring to because it was pretty messy for a little while.
Yeah,
And they had previously been working on their own well and their own septic. You know, like you have to abandon both of them and hook up to the city. And they did that.
They were active septic tanks?
Pardon me?
They were on septic tanks, you said?
Yes,
Really? An industry on septic tanks.
it was. Yeah,
Wow,
it was bad.
okay. Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, that's all we have. Just one more thing. Thank you, Ms.
Yeah.
Thompson, for the lovely framed certificate of attendance on our ethics training.
I can't take responsibility for the frame. Staff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, meeting adjourned 7:37. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.
That's question. What you think of that? Sorry. Because there's.